Goku and Vegeta set out for Zeno's palace with Whis, Beerus, and the East Supreme Kai at their side. Their purpose was simple in words, yet weighty in consequence: to request an official permit to travel to Universe 11 and challenge Jiren once more. When they arrived, however, it wasn't present Zeno who came to greet them. Instead, the Grand Priest stood waiting, future Zeno hovering at his side, his small face lighting up the instant he spotted Goku. Excitement trembled through him as he hurriedly explained that present Zeno was away, visiting a place known only as the Great Pool. Goku's curiosity ignited at once.
The Great Pool? What's that?
Future Zeno let out a delighted giggle, the sound ringing softly through the grand chamber.
It's a super secret place.
He turned to the Grand Priest with wide, eager eyes.
Can we take them there, please?
The Grand Priest inclined his head with calm certainty. Without a word, he led them down a long, silent corridor whose pale walls shimmered faintly with ancient power. At its end rose a tall, unadorned door, imposing in its simplicity as though it guarded something meant for only a handful of beings to ever witness. Beyond it, hidden from almost all existence, awaited the Great Pool. As they stepped through the towering doorway, a winding path stretched before them, weaving its way through jagged, ancient trees. A soft mist curled around their ankles, swirling lazily as golden rays of light pierced through the dense canopy above. In the distance, the Great Pool shimmered, a vast mirror-like lake cradled by towering white cliffs that loomed over the water's surface. Small pebble-strewn beaches lined the edges, punctuated by patches of strange, twisting vegetation. Scattered throughout the landscape stood clusters of balanced stone formations, their peculiar arrangements reminiscent of ancient Inukshuks, lending the place an air of quiet mystery. Following the Grand Priest and future Zeno, the group pressed forward, their footsteps muffled by the damp earth beneath them. Goku, his eyes wide with curiosity, drank in the alien surroundings. Then, something caught his attention. A peculiar plant, its branches heavy with clusters of jewel-bright berries. Without a second thought, he strode over, plucked a handful, and tossed them into his mouth. Vegeta let out an exasperated sigh.
Idiot!
Before Goku could answer, Beerus and the East Supreme Kai practically teleported to his side, their faces etched with panic.
Have you lost your mind?
The Supreme Kai hissed, darting a terrified glance toward the Grand Priest.
This is a sacred place.
Beerus's tail lashed behind him in irritation as he cuffed Goku sharply on the back of the head.
If we get erased because of you, I swear.
Goku only grinned, entirely unbothered.
Come on, relax. They taste amazing.
Vegeta let out a low groan, the sound of a man resigning himself to the inevitable. The Grand Priest did not so much as pause. His expression remained perfectly neutral. Future Zeno, floating along with carefree delight, giggled at the scene without the slightest hint of concern. Once the brief storm of panic had passed, the group moved on, their footsteps whispering against the mist-covered earth. A quiet settled over them, soft as falling dew. And as they walked deeper into the heart of that sacred place, the two deities of Universe 7 began to speak as they revealed to Goku and Vegeta the ancient mysteries surrounding the Great Pool.
The Great Pool is no ordinary body of water.
The East Supreme Kai murmured, his eyes wandering across the vast, shimmering expanse before them.
It is a reservoir of ether, the essence of existence itself, the life force that threads through all things, the foundation of every being, every spark of ki. It cannot be created, nor can it be destroyed, but only transformed. Its quantity is finite, allotted carefully across the multiverses at Zeno's discretion.
Beerus continued in his stead, his voice calm, yet edged with solemn authority.
The gods of destruction and creation merely serve as stewards of this force. When a Supreme Kai gives life to a new world, they shape ether into matter. And when we, the gods of destruction, invoke Hakai, we don't simply erase, we return matter to ether.
He paused, his golden eyes narrowing.
That is why those touched by Hakai never reach the afterlife. They do not move on. They simply cease to exist.
Beerus went on, his tail flicking lazily behind him.
The angels, naturally, are the ones who oversee our work. They make certain we do not grow greedy or careless. After all, the power to manipulate Æther is the closest any being can come to absolute.
The East Supreme Kai's voice grew softer, colored by both awe and warning.
The danger of Æther lies not only in its power, but in its possibility. With it, a mortal could ascend to divinity, or relics of unimaginable strength might be forged, like the angel's own staffs or the Patara earrings.
He drew in a slow, steady breath.
Even when only a few drops of Æther flow through such artifacts, they hold the potential to reshape reality itself.
As he spoke, the group reached their destination, a high cliff overlooking the great pool, its surface scattered with ancient stone formations, arranged with almost ritual precision. The place was serene, yet thrumming with quiet meaning. The wind that swept across it seemed to carry with it the faint murmurs of ages long gone. The Grand Priest turned to them, his expression composed but purposeful.
"Wait here,"
he said.
"Future Zeno and I will go ahead to summon present Zeno."
With a graceful nod, he and future Zeno drifted toward a secluded edge of the cliff. The others watched in silence, anticipation coiling gently in their chests as the two figures moved away, light, unhurried, and utterly at ease with the mysteries that lay beyond. Seizing the rare hush that had settled over the group, Whis inclined himself slightly toward Goku and Vegeta. When he spoke, his voice was soft, barely more than a breath, but carried with it a curious, silvery weight, as though each word held a secret waiting to be revealed.
"There is something you may not know,"
he murmured, his eyes sparkling with a quiet, mischievous light.
"The Guardians, those who dwell within the great pool, are the protectors of this sacred place."
Goku blinked while Vegeta's expression sharpened, the faintest spark of suspicion glinting in his gaze. Whis continued serenely, unaffected by either reaction.
"They are beings of tremendous power, entrusted with the solemn duty of watching over the great pool itself. They are more than mere attendants to present Zeno, though they serve as his companions and counselors, much like the two you have always seen at his side."
His voice lowered into an almost reverent whisper.
"They are also the stewards of the Æther. The wisdom of the multiverses resides in them, guiding Zeno's hand in decisions that ripple across all of existence. These guardians,"
Whis continued, his tone taking on a faint, almost ceremonial gravity,
"are born from the Æther itself. In a sense, they are timeless beings, creatures forged at the very dawn of existence. Their purpose is paramount. They are the enforcers of universal law, ensuring that no being, mortal, divine, or even angelic, dares to corrupt the ether, the very essence from which life is woven."
He paused deliberately, letting the weight of his words settle like dust on ancient stone.
"In the earliest stages of their existence, the young guardians are sent out across the multiverses to observe the conduct of the gods. Their task is vital: to watch, to listen, to intervene only when necessary, whenever the balance falters or divine errors threaten to send entire realms teetering toward chaos."
Whis cast a meaningful glance at Goku and Vegeta, before adding, with a gentle note of amusement,
"You have actually met one of these young guardians already, on Beerus's planet, the creature you call the Oracle Fish. That nickname is somewhat affectionate. Young guardians spend their infancy immersed in the ether itself, swimming through it, one might say much like fish in water."
Goku and Vegeta exchanged a quick, bewildered look, a spark of recognition flickering in their eyes. Of course, they had seen the oracle fish countless times, yet never once imagined the depth of what it truly was. Whis continued, his voice smooth and even.
Once the guardians mature into what we call adolescence, they return to the great pool. They come back bearing the wisdom gathered over billions of years spent observing gods and angels alike, and with it, the first glimmers of true discernment. In that stage, they are guided by the adult guardians, those who have already crossed the threshold into full wisdom, who mentor them patiently, leading them toward what we consider enlightenment.
As Whis finished speaking, the Grand Priest appeared at the edge of the cliff, accompanied by both Xenos, 2 adult guardians, and 5 adolescent ones. Their arrival shifted the atmosphere of the place, subtly, unmistakably, imbuing the clearing with a solemnity that felt almost sacred. When the Grand Priest addressed the group, his voice carried with it the serene authority of centuries upon centuries.
Present Zeno, together with his 2 advisors, is currently occupied recalculating the multiverse scores following the aftermath of the Tournament of Power. However, he insisted on pausing his work to come and greet you,
he said, his gaze drifting over each of them in turn.
Future Zeno, instead, has chosen not to participate in this delicate task owing to a temporal incongruity. Within the great pool, time does not behave as it should. Decisions made simultaneously by 2 Zenos from differing timelines could create a paradox, one capable of unraveling the entire multiverse.
The weight of the Grand Priest's words hung heavily over the group, as though the very air had paused to consider their meaning. Time itself, so absolute in every other corner of existence, revealed its fragility here in the presence of the great pool. Even the faintest disturbance could unravel realities far beyond their comprehension. As the explanation settled, so too did the grandeur of the moment. The 2 adult guardians, Mizuikoi and Gyuro, stepped forward, their mere presence enough to draw every eye. They moved with a composed, almost regal assurance, acknowledging only Whis, Beerus, and the East Supreme Kai with the slightest nods of respect. To Goku and Vegeta, however, they offered not even a flicker of attention, as though the 2 Saiyans were little more than incidental figures in a place reserved for higher beings. Left standing on the periphery, Goku and Vegeta exchanged a brief look, an unspoken admission that, for once, they were unmistakably out of their depth amid powers and hierarchies older than time itself. Under the Grand Priest's attentive gaze, the 5 adolescent guardians stepped forward, each announcing their name with a barely contained excitement. Tayokani, Unakama, Ebiashi, Takotsume, and Koya. Power radiated from all 5 of them, unmistakably so, but their movements, their expressions, even the way they stood betrayed a youthful energy that set them apart from the serene composure of the adult guardians. Tayokani flashed a broad grin, his eyes alight with exuberance, as if introductions were the highlight of his existence. Unakama held himself with confident poise, though a faint glimmer of humility softened his gaze. Ebiashi, the most animated of the group, all but bounced where he stood. Takotsume seemed calm by comparison, but the playful spark dancing in his eyes made his restraint feel more deliberate than natural. Koya, however, remained nestled behind the others, shoulders drawn in, his gaze fixed on the ground. A nervous tension clung to him like a second skin, and when his eyes flickered briefly toward Goku, he flinched, as though unsettled by something he could not bring himself to voice. The adult guardians, Mizuikoi and Gyuro, turned to the 5 younger beings with the composed patience of seasoned mentors. In calm, measured tones, they explained the significance of Goku and Vegeta's presence in the Great Pool, reminding the adolescent guardians that the path of wisdom could only be pursued by understanding all forms of life across the multiverses. Before their words could fully settle, present Zeno's face lit up like a child spotting a long-lost companion. In a blur of delighted motion, he rushed straight toward Goku and wrapped his arms around him in a warm, enthusiastic embrace. The gesture was so sudden, so unrestrainedly affectionate, that it stunned everyone. most of all the 5 adolescent guardians. They stood rooted to the spot, eyes wide, jaws slack, as they watched the supreme being, the ruler of all universes, the one whose choices could unmake creation with a thought, greet a mortal with such open, heartfelt joy. For a moment they simply stared, unable to reconcile the boundless, almost innocent intimacy of the gesture with the cosmic authority of the being who had given it. The younger 5's astonishment gradually softened into a quiet, reverent awe. In that moment, they began to grasp why Goku and his companions had been granted passage to the sacred Great Pool. Xeno's boundless affection for the scion, a mortal, no less, elevated Goku in their eyes. The distinction became unmistakably clear. He was not merely a warrior. He was someone with whom Xeno shared a rare and profound bond. Goku, ever eager to seize an opening, stepped back from the embrace and flashed his familiar, boyish grin. With the straightforward earnestness that defined him, he addressed present Xeno with renewed resolve.
Xeno, I'd like to ask for permission to travel to Universe 11. I want a rematch with Jiren. It's been on my mind ever since the Tournament of Power. I need to face him again.
But the request did not settle as smoothly as Goku had hoped. Present Xeno and the adult guardians exchanged hesitant, uncertain glances. It was unusual, unprecedented even, for a mortal to request travel between universes for such a personal reason. And though this wasn't the first time Goku had sought a similar privilege, his duel with Hit had already set a precedent. This request felt different, weightier, more questionable in the eyes of those who walked the path of wisdom. Sensing the hesitation settling over the group, Goku's eyes lit up with that familiar spark of mischief and enthusiasm, the kind that meant he was already cooking up an alternative approach. Without missing a beat, he bounded forward, clearly determined to sway them by any means he understood best. His grin widened from ear to ear as he offered his counter-proposal, the unabashed attempt to win their approval written all over his face.
All right, I get it. How about this?
He said, flinging his arms open as though unveiling some grand treasure.
I'll host a massive feast on Earth, packed with the best food you've ever tasted. There'll be loads of people to meet and a ton of fun. And the best part,
he added proudly,
you'll get to try dishes cooked by the greatest chef I know, my wife.
The suggestion, so wildly out of place in such a solemn setting, nevertheless seized everyone's attention. Even the Grand Priest, usually a portrait of composure, lifted an eyebrow in mild surprise at the mention of Earth's cuisine. Standing nearby, Whis let out a soft, musical chuckle, clearly entertained by the idea.
I must admit, Earth's food is quite exceptional,
he said, turning a sly, knowing glance toward the Grand Priest.
I dare say even I wouldn't mind partaking in such a feast.
The Grand Priest considered this, nodding slowly, thoughtfully, in agreement. Future Xeno and present Xeno, meanwhile, were practically glowing with delight at the very thought. Their faces brightened in unison, their usual stillness dissolving into pure, childlike excitement.
A party? For us?
Present Xeno breathed, as though the idea were too wonderful to be real. The notion of being invited to such a grand celebration captivated them completely. It was so rare, almost unheard of, for anyone to consider the often lonely existence of beings who ruled every universe. Their joy radiated in shimmering waves as they bounced lightly on their heels, unable to contain the thrill bubbling inside them. For entities who governed everything yet seldom enjoyed anything, the chance to slip free, if only for an evening, from the solitude of omnipotence felt irresistibly appealing. They knew nothing of wealth or ego, but the promise of a carefree celebration filled with friends, laughter, and Earth's incomparable food stirred something warm within them. Something only Goku had ever truly reached. Despite their silence, Mizuikoi and Gyuro, the 2 adult guardians, shared a look of quiet concern. They were not so easily swayed by earthly promises, least of all when the delicate balance of the multiverse was involved. Yet they knew, as did everyone present, that the final decision rested solely with the Xenos. Goku, swept up in his own excitement, only grinned wider as he spun toward the guardians.
You too, all of you. You're invited. Come join the party on Earth,
he declared, his voice ringing out with the cheerful certainty that nothing could possibly go wrong. Tayokani, Unakama, Ebiashi, and Takotsume lit up at once, their youthful faces shining with enthusiasm at the prospect of such an adventure. The adult guardians, however, merely exchanged another knowing glance. Though their expressions remained composed, they could not ignore the opportunity the invitation presented. It would be more than a celebration. It would be a rare chance to observe mortals up close, to learn from them and to guide their young disciples along the path of wisdom. On the other hand, Beerus and the East Supreme Kai traded a tense, almost horrified glance, the color draining from their faces at the mere thought of the Xenos causing chaos in Universe 7. The implications of letting the supreme rulers of all existence attend a simple mortal feast were staggering.
What if they get carried away?
Beerus muttered under his breath, his ears twitching with barely concealed anxiety. The possibility of the Xenos acting on one of their unpredictable whims was enough to make even a god of destruction uneasy. The East Supreme Kai wasn't faring much better. His usually serene expression had tightened with worry as he folded his arms across his chest.
Yes, the consequences of hosting such an extravagant event could be catastrophic for Universe 7,
he murmured. Goku, however, remained completely unfazed. He let out a cheerful laugh, waving off their fears with an easy flick of his hand, as though the potential destruction of the multiverse were nothing more than a minor inconvenience.
Don't worry, guys. I've got this,
he said, grinning from ear to ear.
Trust me, having the Xenos at the party will only make it better.
Beerus and the East Supreme Kai exchanged uneasy glances, but neither dared to argue. Over the years, they had learned, sometimes painfully, that Goku's unorthodox methods tended to work out in their own inexplicable way. His approach to crises was unlike anything the gods had ever encountered. Yet time and again, his unwavering faith in the strength of his bonds had kept Universe 7 intact through disasters that should have spelled its end. Elated that his request had been accepted, Goku all but burst with excitement. He spun toward the youthful guardians, practically glowing as he spoke, unable to contain his enthusiasm for his homeworld.
Earth has everything,
he exclaimed.
Incredible food, breathtaking landscapes. You'll love it.
His words tumbled out in a rush of pure, contagious energy, the kind that effortlessly drew everyone's attention and held it fast. Among them, Koya, who had been lingering quietly at the edge of the group, nervously propping himself against a precariously stacked pile of stones, found himself swept up by the moment. Goku, blissfully unaware of the young guardian's unease, gave him a hearty pat on the shoulder. The gesture, far more forceful than intended, startled Koya so thoroughly that he stumbled back a step. His heel clipped against one of the inukshuk. In an instant, the carefully balanced stack began to tremble, the delicate arrangement quivering on the brink of collapse. The pile of stones toppled one after another, and the smallest piece, once perched proudly at the very top, rolled off the edge of the cliff with a soft, echoing clink. It tumbled downward, falling toward the vast, shimmering expanse of the ether-filled lake below. A hush swept over the group, every gaze fixed instantly on the descending stone. The adult guardians exchanged swift, unreadable glances, yet none of them moved to intervene. Even the Grand Priest simply observed, his expression calm and inscrutable. The tiny stone finally met the surface of the ether, sending out a neat ring of ripples, perfect circles that expanded outward with quiet grace. For a brief moment, they shimmered across the lake before fading into nothing, as though the water itself had swallowed them whole. Goku, entirely unfazed, let out an awkward chuckle and shot Koya a sheepish smile.
Oops, my bad. Hope that doesn't cause any trouble,
he said, flashing the same carefree grin that had gotten him into, and out of, more than a few predicaments. Despite the lingering tension, Zeno, ever the embodiment of childlike wonder, burst into a radiant smile. His laughter chimed across the cliffside as he turned to Goku.
It's a deal!
he announced brightly, extending his tiny hand toward the Saiyan. Goku met the gesture with a warm, easy handshake. And the very instant their hands touched, the entire group vanished, gone between one heartbeat and the next, whisked away to Earth, where the feast, and whatever chaos might follow, awaited them.